Are we finally back on?
We
Is
are
Hoops
on.
HD fixed?
Yes, it is.
Oh boy, I don't know how many days into the future is, but I'm just glad that it's fixed.
Good evening, good morning, good day, everyone. My name is Chad Sherwood. Welcome back to Hoops HD.
It might be April for all I know. No, it might be May. It is April.
This is our Hoops HD report, our regular season NCAA tournament wrap-up special. We're not certain when it's going to be posted because we have a little bit of technical difficulties with the website right now, but it will be back up very soon if you happen to be watching this on YouTube and wondering why our site is not up. But again, I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. We've got Matt Sikowski and David Griggs with us up here. Down below, we got John Slika and Joby Fortson. And David, I want to start by congratulating you on finally getting out of the puppet bunker.
I'm never going into that damn place again. Well, a couple like slight differences between my bunker and Joe Lenardi's. For starters, Joe Lenardi can come and go as he pleases. He's not even in an actual bunker. You just locked me into a bunker.
Was it nice to finally get a meal?
Yes.
Let's
puppets eat.
What do puppets
anything
eat?
that you put in front of us?
I know what you drink.
Yeah.
Let's get into this, though. This is our wrap-up show from the NCAA tournament, and start by congratulating the North Carolina Tar Heels, our NCAA champions for the 2016-2017 season.
For now.
Now, until it gets vacated, correct. Joby, you being our ACC guy, now the question has to get asked. Dean Smith won 2 championships. Roy Williams won 3. Has he tied or maybe eclipsed Dean Smith?
I will say this. Roy Williams deserves more credit than the average fan gives him. Is he better than Dean Smith? Dean Smith revolutionized the game in so many different ways. I can't pinpoint a single item that Roy Williams per se revolutionized that has changed the game per se. He's just a very good coach, and he is a good coach. The one thing that I will point to is he teaches better transition offense and defense than anybody, including Calipari or whoever you want to throw out there. When you combine the two components of it, he really gets that game. And that's why Carolina typically is fun to watch because that's something they rely on. Not just on the offense side, but the defensive side as well. But is he better than Dean Smith? I mean, come on, get real. Dean Smith should have won more than 2, as we all know. Maybe he's a better tournament coach, given he's made, 6 finals now? Maybe he's a better tournament coach.
I mean, you can always play the coulda, woulda, shoulda game as far as his tenure at Kansas, but we'll just leave that to Jayhawk fans.
Yeah. And I think I got to agree with Joby. I mean, as great as Roy Williams is, there's a couple coaches that he just won't pass. Is he better than Dean Smith? No. Is he better than Tim Miles? No. But he's an excellent coach.
Okay, so we have him 3rd overall in David's book. But yeah, it was a great season. Another great tournament run by Carolina. Tournament I did not see coming from them, quite honestly. But
I didn't either. I had them out early.
But let's actually talk about the entirety of the Final Four, and let's go back a second before we move forward and go back to the semifinals and start with this Gonzaga-South Carolina game. And Sleek, I got to bring you in here. You being the Frank Martin fan for the last I don't know how many years, and he sold me over this year with what he did with Carolina, even though they could not get by Gonzaga, although it was a great game.
Yeah, it was not one of their best shooting games, and Gonzaga, I mean, with the exception of the title game, they were able to outshoot all of their opponents throughout the year, but ended up being, I think it was a 3-point game before the Gamecocks finally went down on Saturday night.
Yeah, it ended up being a 77-73 final, Matt, and Thornwell was coming off of the flu, and man, if he'd been healthier, I think Carolina would have won that game.
It might have been a little bit of a different story. I don't think something like Kardowski didn't have a good Final Four. Zach Collins was awesome, and that if he stays, Gonzaga might be right back here next year. But now, because he was so good till the title game, it's more of an if than it was going in.
All right. David, the other semifinal was that 1-point Carolina win over Oregon, 77-76. The score there, which even though Carolina was leading most of the way, still at the last minute, Oregon gets back in there and has the shot when twice Carolina goes to the free throw line, and twice goes over 2, and twice comes up with the offensive rebound. Both times Jordan Bell missing the blockout.
Yeah, it was quite remarkable in a very unremarkable. It was remarkable how unremarkable that was on Oregon's part. The whole game, and I don't mean to take anything away from the Ducks, because for starters, they were without a key player coming into this tournament. I did not have them this deep at all. I was expecting Rhode Island to beat them throughout that whole game. They had one of the more impressive singular wins of the tournament with what they did against Kansas in the Elite Eight, get to their first Final Four, and despite coming up empty seemingly on key possession after key possession after key possession in the latter part of that game, we're right in there with a chance to win all the way up until the horn went off. Not boxing out, not getting the offensive rebounds. But part of me, in a way, is you want to be critical of Oregon for that. A big part of me wants to give a heads up to North Carolina, too, for earning those offensive rebounds. Oregon should have gotten them. There's no guarantee they would have won the game had they had a final shot at it. In fact, it seemed like the way they were coming up on all those empty possessions, I'm guessing that they wouldn't have, but it would have been fun to at least have them have a shot at winning the game. It was a tremendous season by the Ducks, probably their best ever since 1939 overall.
Well, this is something that David, you and I both spoken out about when teams are trying to intentionally miss free throws in end of game situations. I don't think Carolina was intentionally trying to miss a free throw here, but you're in a situation both times with the second of those 2 free throws where it would have been a difference between a 1-point game and a 2-point game. And either way, Oregon's only shot's going to be a 3, so it's going to be a game-winning shot. Mm-hmm. So almost if you're an Oregon fan, it's better if they make the second free throw. Then you get the out-of-bounds play. You could throw it a little further into the court. You can maybe save yourself half a second to a second to get a slightly better shot off at the end of the game situation. And if you're in a situation where you'd be better off if the other team makes a free throw, why not commit the intentional lane violation? Now, my understanding of the rules is that if you kept doing it, the referees can warn you and eventually assess you a technical for delay a game. But once or twice to try it is not going to get you a technical. Why not do it? Why not step into the lane?
Well, I don't think it occurs to a lot of coaches to do that. It is within the rules. What is not within the rules that I didn't know was why not jump in and goaltend the shot? Apparently, that is an automatic technical foul.
Okay. Well, that's a little extreme, I think.
Because I forget, I think it was Kyle Lamb suggested that once, and I'm like, that's brilliant. Why hasn't anyone done that when it's a situation where a team's missing on purpose, which North Carolina was not in that situation. They were not missing on purpose. But if it is, if you jump into the lane and goaltend the shot, wouldn't they just count the free throw? Well, apparently they would, and then they would assess them 2 more free throws. So you don't want to – You don't want to not know that rule. But the lane violation, I have seen it done. Brad Brunell at Clemson and formerly at Wright State has done it. It was the first time I saw him actually at Wright State do it that it even occurred to me. So maybe it just hadn't occurred to that many people. But he has done it before, but I've not seen it done by anyone else, literally, the intentional lane violation.
Now, would it be 2 technical free throws or just 1 technical free throw, since this would just be more administrative than unsportsmanlike?
I think it's unsportsmanlike, actually, because it's considered a delay of game. But Matt, had Oregon stepped into the lane half a second early, they would have let them reshoot the free throw. Maybe it goes, and now you've got a shot.
Well, yeah, I say you'd rather have the ball probably out of bounds down 2 than off a scrambled play down 1 where, like that way you're all out of sorts and you're basically getting a half-court heave where if you, they make the free throw or the intentional lane violation, you take it out of bounds. Who knows, pass it to half court, or if not, you get some momentum going. I mean, to actually go back to the Florida-Wisconsin game, hit a normally awful free throw shooter, Nigel Hayes, missed that free throw. I don't think Chris Chiazza comes and hits that game winner.
Exactly. It's the exact same thing here. So you're better off. Florida was better off with the made free throw. Oregon would have been better off with the made free throw, and you could do something to try and help him make the free throw. Why not do it? Joby, that brings us to the championship game, of course, Carolina and Gonzaga. And I would say that this was one of the better Final Fours ever, just because we had 3 really close games. But we got to talk about the second half of this championship game and what the officials did to it.
Oh.
Oh, I mean, come on. It showed a complete lack of awareness. We talk about often players choking or players not having the ability to rise to the big game, or they do rise to the big game. This was a group of officials who didn't realize this was the big game. They failed. They choked. Maybe not because they were nervous, because they were completely unaware of the situation. The reason why we have the limitation, the freedom of movement rules, which is what they're really stressing, especially on some of the hedge plays, hedge screen plays that they were calling, the reason we have those fouls in there is so if you call them, especially early in the season, people will stop doing it. But the fact is, at the end of the day, they're ticky-tack fouls. It's like holding in football. You can call it on every play in almost every game. Yes, we had teams going inside, which leads to more contact. Yes, we had guards that would drive the lane and initiate contact. But the fact of the matter still remains that there is contact in basketball, and just because 2 players touch doesn't mean there's a foul. And you ruin the game when you over-prescribe to it. That's what these officials did. I know I'm saying what pretty much every analyst out there is saying, so I'm sorry I'm not breaking new ground. But I am citing wholeheartedly that these officials altered the game's flow. I'm not saying they altered the result, but they altered this game's flow to make the fan enjoyment less so.
And I agree with you. I mean, the calls were equally as bad on both sides. I don't think they cost Gonzaga the championship. I mean, Meeks had to be out just as much as Karnowski had to be out. But Matt, I think if you're going to do this, you should do it the first 5 minutes of the game, kind of set a little bit of a tone, and then back off on it. Not do it until the final buzzer at the end of the national championship game.
No, that was just crazy to me. Is like they, for the most part, let them play in the first half, and you had decent flow. Neither team was executing that well, but there was still a decent flow to the game.
Yeah.
Second half, the refs took over, and you just had a ref show of epic proportions. And not shockingly, Michael Stevens was involved. How on earth he was rated as one of the top 3 officials, mind-blowing, seeing him butcher Big East game after Big East game.
Well, was it bad that I wish Teddy Valentine had gotten the call for this game instead?
It was bad enough to the point where I was willing to watch the A's and the Angels in their opener instead of the title game.
I never thought I'd be logging for Jim Burr and Tim Higgins, but my God, I was ready to start logging for Jim Burr and Tim Higgins.
Let's leave Jim Burr's going to extreme. Let's come on.
Right.
Where's Jimmy Lucky?
David, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it was just disappointing. Just to piggyback off of what Joby said, I was so excited about this game, really ever since. I mean, on Saturday, I'm like, oh man, this is a great final. What a great story. You have the blue blood in North Carolina. You have Gonzaga in the year they've had. I mean, there is nothing to not like about this game. I like how both of them play. I like this matchup. It's going to be great. And throughout the first half it was. And I just feel like – and I don't want to blame it entirely on the officiating because I know that they have to call – but when it came to administering the game, they just took the flow out of it. It wasn't fun to watch. It couldn't have been fun to play in. Had it been officiated differently, I think it would have been a better game. I feel like they kind of ruined it. Like, it's bad enough when you have a game that you're excited about at some point in the season and you feel like officiating ruins it or game flow ruins it or poor play ruins it. This was the game, and I felt like we had one good half and it was the wrong half.
Well, let's talk about the game, kind of ignoring the officiating. Joel Berry won the most outstanding player for the tournament, and you got to say, I mean, amazing that he's coming in there injured and had such an amazing championship game. I don't know that he was – he was most outstanding player for the Final Four. I thought he was a little bit weaker in the semifinal game. He didn't put up the numbers. And, Joby, I would have given the most outstanding player to Kennedy Meeks.
I agree 100%.
Who had an amazing semifinal game with a double-double. And while he didn't have the points of the championship game, I think he was the difference because he shut down Karnowski and got in Karnowski's head.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You're hitting all the points, Chad. I agree 100% to Kennedy Meeks. would have been my choice. I think it's a little bit of a Willis Reed fascination with Barry. I mean, what Joe Barry did was amazing in the championship game because without him, because Jackson was just for some reason off from the outside. Whereas, if you saw that semifinal, Jackson was the key from the outside, where Meeks was the key from the inside. But Meeks was there both games, whereas Jackson and Barry each kind of missed again. And Barry was awful. And not to rag on him because, after all, he was injured. But he was awful. I mean, flat out awful on Saturday as far as shooting and even, they had to bring Britt in to run the show on a lot of this because of it. Meeks carried that. Without Kenny Meeks, they're not playing on Monday. And then he did all the dirty work, especially on the defensive end on Monday night. And to see Karnowski, Meeks is the only one I've seen. I've seen Gonzaga play a number of times. He's the only one to effectively do that to Karnowski to the degree he did. I was really impressed.
Yeah, John, I just thought that, by the end of the game there, those last 2 or 3 minutes, Karnowski was just a body on the floor that was doing nothing. It was like his heart was out of the game completely when you are in a 1-point game with 2 minutes left of the national championship.
Yeah, there were times when he seemed a little bit terrified, but then again, he wasn't the only one that seemed to fall apart completely for Gonzaga in the final minute because it seemed like whenever they would have a chance to tie, they would commit, I think, turnovers on their final 2 possessions, which sealed the deal for North Carolina.
Right, but and I agree with that also. But Matt, really, the only time that you saw Gonzaga effective down low was when they had Karnowski and Collins on the floor, because obviously Meeks can only guard one of them.
Well, yeah, exactly. The Collins is athletic enough kind of to stick with Hicks on defense, and then offense, he's taller, longer, it can score over him. So that was hurt. Like, when Collins fouled out, you could either play them together or even just taking Karnowski flat out of the game and played Williams and Collins at the 4 and 5. But yeah, I think Collins fouling out really was the game changer for Gonzaga. That and, well, of course, then Nigel Williams-Goss turning his ankle late.
Well, let's talk about that a little, David. I know there's been talk about this, but it was, I think, under 2 minutes left when Williams-Goss turned his ankle.
Yeah.
And I know he took a couple shots and he missed them after that. But if I'm the Zags and I know his ankle is turned, I would have not used him as my shooter. I would have used him as the distraction, draw the defense to him, because you still got guys like Jordan Matthews, and you still have Karnowski down low, theoretically, right. I guess. But you had other options. It's not like Williams-Goss was your only offensive option. He wasn't even your main offensive option all year.
Right. And again, I agree with that too. I mean, you have to admire, I guess, the courage or the will to get out there and play, but he wasn't the best option. Yeah, I agree with that. And God, I just, when you dissect this game over and over, and there's a lot of criticism to go around, and to be fair, had Gonzaga pulled this out, which they almost did, we'd probably be able to say a lot of the same things about North Carolina. But, I mean, based on how well they played this year and all the weapons they had, just to have one after another come up short, like between – just the lack of close play and then the injury at the end and, other key turnovers and other missed opportunities. The Zags had a chance to win this game and arguably should have.
Well, let me turn to one other question actually about this game, Joby. Let me throw this over to you here. We talked about Roy Williams. I've seen this out there mentioned. Do you consider Mark Few to now be a Hall of Fame caliber coach?
Yeah, sure. I think Mark Few, you don't have to.
If he retired tomorrow,
if he retired tomorrow, I would definitely give what he's done at Gonzaga. That's pretty remarkable, and it's Hall of Fame worthy. He has taken a program that was literally nothing, or at least not the elite level it was, and. Oh my gosh! I mean,
they were a mid-level West Coast team,
which was a
15 seed caliber league at the time.
He leaves tomorrow. Their next coach is going to be good, precisely because of him. They're going to be able to get somebody and continue the program. And the fact he took a not just mid-major, I mean, we talk mid-major all the time. And Wichita State's a mid-major, but Wichita State's been around for 30, 40 years as a competitive team, since the Xavier McDaniel days. This is a team that was anybody shocked they made the Final Four? Should have been. They were the number one seed, and legitimately so out west.
I see what you did there, Joby.
Yeah. But this is what Final Four. This is what Hall of Fame coaches are made of. Even if they don't win it all. Brad Stevens is a Hall of Fame coach. He didn't win it all.
Sorry, Matt, you had a comment?
Yeah. I was just saying, I think basically he's just about Jerry Tarkanian without the shenanigans.
If we got him a towel and we shaved the head.
But as far as taking a program that was well below a top level and making it a powerhouse program in a smaller conference.
Well, I guess the question here is Vegas did not hold off that much longer after Tarkanian was gone. So
yeah, he actually did it twice. Long Beach State was a top 10 program, and they have not been since he left. So,
in fact, I think they've had just one Sweet 16 since Tarkanian left, and we can thank Lon Kruger for that.
And I'll tell you the other thing about Mark Few and Gonzaga. I heard you saw some articles coming out before the championship game about Dan Munson. How he was the guy that started it because he was the coach before Few that got them to that first NCAA tournament. I think it was an Elite Eight run.
Who's coincidentally at Long Beach State.
Who's now at Long Beach State, coincidentally. But I don't think if Dan Munson had stayed, that Gonzaga would be what they became. I think this was Mark Few a lot more than it was. Yeah, Dan Munson was the guy before him, pretty much, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Let me ask each a question, and David, let me start with you on this. What would you consider to have been the best game of the entire NCAA tournament that we saw this year? Not just probably not the championship game because of what the officials did to it, but was it one of these semifinals, or you want to go back to that overtime game with Florida, Wisconsin, or somewhere else?
Florida, Wisconsin's up there. I have to I guess because of just how unexpected it was, and how well played it was. I would say the Xavier Arizona game was a great game. It came down to, again, a shot that was not. I mean, it wasn't a buzzer beater like Florida, Wisconsin, but it was a shot in the final possession that would have likely won the game. And it was just back and forth the whole way. The whole storyline between Sean Miller and how he'd been at Xavier and how they don't regularly play. Nobody from that coaching tree regularly plays. And just Xavier, the year they've had and how they were an 11 seed and what a big upset it was. I thought that was the best one.
Okay. Stalika, I assume you'd agree with it being a Xavier guy.
Well, I mean, I guess if I'm going to be someone other than a Xavier homer, I'm going to have to go a little bit off of that track and say South Carolina and Duke was also significant because
you just took my game, actually. Go ahead, though.
Because it launched South Carolina into the Sweet 16 and subsequent Final Four run, but also took Duke out in the second round, and as we'll get into later, could that have had something to do with North Carolina begging for tournament games to return to their home state?
All right, Joey, where are you at with the best game?
Well, I'm sorry if I was taking it, Matt, because I assume you were going to go here. I am going to go with that Florida-Wisconsin game. I mean, come on. It wasn't just the fact that you had the buzzer beater at the end off the made free throw, you could say, of Nigel Hayes. To get to that point, you had a buzzer beater with Aaron Rodgers in the audience and doing the belt thing. I mean, and then back and forth. You think Wisconsin, because Hayes makes those free throws, you think, wow, this is amazing. It's back and forth, and it ends on not just there's some buzzer beaters that are memorable, obviously last year in the championship game, but those were beautiful shots. This was like this underhanded loofy-doo that goes in. It almost reminds me of how Tyus Edney was off balance on his, buzzer beater, but closer. Obviously, that was more of a layup going coast to coast. But it was like, the contorted body throw up. It is, that's one of the great games of the NCAA tournament in any year.
Matt, you agree?
Oh, yeah, I was definitely mentioned. There's two others. One, the Kentucky-North Carolina game, really good. The other one, I think for quality of play and excitement, everything, was actually Purdue-Iowa State in the second round.
Oh, yeah.
high level
Good
of play, still excitement, still went down to the finish. And like it felt like almost a team won a game, and not like Florida basically handed that game to Wisconsin, who then handed it back to Florida. This is one where I understand, like, Purdue didn't even play bad there in that sense. Iowa State was just playing amazing, and then Purdue withstood it and came back and won.
Well, I'm going to go with Sleeka just because of the effect it had on the entire tournament, that South Carolina-Duke game, because this was a Duke team that a lot of people thought were going to win it all, and I am going to agree with him. Although I'm very disappointed that nobody picked Mount St. Mary's New Orleans in the play-in game. Very, very disappointed.
It was in terms of excitement, it was way up there.
Honestly, if I wanted to choose a play-in game, I would have chosen USC over Providence when you consider that big comeback the Trojans had.
But I guess on that note, let's kind of turn to some news outside of the tournament that's been going on. And Sleeka, you hinted at it already. Let's go right to there. North Carolina State did a partial repeal, I guess you could say, of the HB2 laws. But as a result, both the ACC and now the NCAA have come out and said that North Carolina can host tournament games again.
Well, technically, they did repeal HB2, which I guess if you go by the letter of the law, you could say they accomplished what they wanted to. But they also passed some other laws saying that localities couldn't pass any non-discrimination ordinances or preventing discrimination for at least 2 or 3 full years under the guise of, well, we want to see how the Supreme Court rules. But it just looks like they were doing everything they possibly could just to get the NCAA tournament to come calling in the state of North Carolina again.
Right, but isn't it also though that the repeal is only going to last for a few years and then it's back up for debate again? Also, that was my reading of it, at least.
It's possible, but I think the precedent was also set when the ACC said, "Okay, we're going to move our championships back into North Carolina, starting with the football game in Charlotte and also the basketball tournaments, which are set to return to Charlotte and Greensboro, and I believe 19 and 20.
Right. And Matt, another big piece of news that we expect to become official, I believe on Friday is the vote, from what I'm understanding.
Yep.
Wichita State to be leaving the Missouri Valley Conference for next season, going over to the American as a basketball-only member, assuming they pass the vote, which is being called on Friday. And it's all indications are that the conference will vote for them because they'd be stupid not to.
But I wonder, could Wichita be going from a one bid league to just a little more high profile one bid league? That probably was Cincy, but yeah, like I will say, outside of that, man, Cincy, assuming Ojale goes pro on SMU, I'm not sure if there is another tournament team in the American other than those two.
I think there is. I know Memphis had some bad news today, but Houston is up and coming. I think they're going to get at least 1 or 2 more teams inside the bubble. UCF has everyone back.
No,
it's without question.
Taco Fall did declare, didn't hire an agent, but did declare for the NBA draft today. So UCF may not have everybody back.
They'll have everybody but him.
Okay,
maybe
if he doesn't go pro.
Everybody except for the one who totally changes teams' games plans.
Yeah. Well, there's that. I mean, there are a few rough spots here, but
it's just a shame that Wichita is not in the Colonial, because you know what would happen if Tom Yeager were still running the show. Wichita's all of their Olympic sports would be banned from whatever postseason conference tournaments would take place while they will be a lame duck.
Yeah, but Wichita move, and actually, Joby, I understand that the Missouri Valley Conference has already scheduled a meeting coming up this weekend to start discussing what they're going to do, and we could see a tiered effect here that the MVC tries to bring somebody else in to replace them right away.
Real quick, and I realize this is more under the radar, but you have to think that Valparaiso is very close to the top of list of candidates, wouldn't you think?
That would be a name that jumped to me.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with David on that at all. I mean, I'm not as familiar with the leadership of the MVC on how they view the world, but the fact that they have an Indiana base, through Iowa, I mean, it would make sense geographically to do something like that. I assume, and I don't know, the Missouri Valley, do they have some connected component that matters to them off the court, off the hardwood and other places? For instance, the Big East liking that Catholic component. The ACC showing, hey, academics matter. You can't be a total slacker. Oh, wait a minute, we need Louisville anyway.
They don't matter when you're Louisville. But.
When you're in a panic mode, sometimes they go out the door. So maybe that'll be interesting.
But it only mattered when West Virginia was a candidate for the ACC, apparently.
Yeah.
which is the conference they should ultimately be in. That's a good question, Joe, because I got to be honest. I was really surprised with the selection of Loyola Chicago. The only thing I could point to was they wanted the Chicago market. Not that Loyola is a bad program, but I would have figured, why do you even want to be I mean, there was nothing wrong in just staying at 9 from what I could tell.
I'll tell you, David, another name that I heard out there, and this may have just been conjecture by fans of the school, was, the NBC previously did have some ties in Oklahoma with Tulsa. Oral Roberts as a potential candidate.
That would be an interesting choice.
It may have just been Oral Roberts fans talking, though, so I'm not going to start spreading rumors.
I mean, I would say they're down right now, but what about the possibility that they go further south into Kentucky and add, let's say, a Murray State if you want to replace one public with another?
Murray State would be – that one never occurred to me. Okay. If you don't know about Oral Roberts, the man who founded the university, you should Google him. He's a very interesting person.
Well, I guess
I saw him on my Sunday morning television quite a bit.
Let's move over to coaching news. And we talked about it a lot last week. The idea of Patrick Ewing possibly becoming the Georgetown coach. It did become official. And my favorite quote, Matt, I got to throw this one to you, quite honestly, because you got a lot of Big East ties. But Patrick Ewing actually said that he's not going to have any problems with recruiting because it's the same as it was back when he was in school today.
I really hope he has some assistants to slap him upside the head, or otherwise Georgetown could continue their ascent to basically becoming another DePaul.
This could be bad, and clearly, Joby, I think what we saw here was the John Thompson Jr. wanting his person, Patrick Ewing, there versus the other people in the administration wanted to go somewhere like a Danny Hurley, and guess who won?
Yeah, no, it's what I said last week. The big cloud that looms over Georgetown is JT II. And yeah, the comments by Ewing should be very concerning. Matt, you should love them because you'll get another win, another 2 wins a year.
I mean, I'd actually like the Big East to have a strong Georgetown and strong St. John's. And I will say, even though Mullen, for not having that, he brought in, Slice Morrison flamed out, but then Matt Abdelmassih is as tied into how the current game is as anyone, and has the creative recruiting of transfers, tampering, but transfers, and it's like building good relationships in New York to where they might have a pretty good 2018 class. Yeah. Whereas Georgetown does Patrick Ewing fine as Matt Abdelmassih.
Yeah, Mullen on the recruiting side, I think, has done things right. Still out there. Yeah, the jury's still out on his coaching capability.
Is it odd?
Pro coaches can come in and do the right things. I point to Avery Johnson, Alabama. Yeah. Avery Johnson was similar to Ewing. Well, actually, he had more experience than Ewing on the coaching.
By a lot.
Obviously, by a lot. But the first thing Avery Johnson said was, I need to start talking to AAU coaches. That was the first thing he said. He didn't talk about the great defense he put in the NBA or strategies or those sort of things. He said, I need to get to know AAU coaches, especially in my region. Sorry, Mr. Ewing, that is exactly what you have to do. And not to say it's a great thing and it's great for the sport, but that is what you have to do.
I'd go one further. If I were Ewing, I'd hire Team Takeover as head coach out of staff.
Yeah, we have a wealth of basketball knowledge and basketball trivia here. I can only think of one other example where a head coach was let go. There might be others. I can only think of one, and it's very obscure. It's Samford, where the head coach was fired or dismissed, and they hired an assistant from that staff. Are there any other – like this is just so, infrequently done. And the fact that the guy that they went with has never been a head coach at any level ever. Now, he could turn out to be the best coach ever. I don't think he will be. But it's anything but a sure thing. What were they doing?
Yeah, you normally clear at the staff. It's when you get a guy
also Ewing was not on George Arteta. He's better in the NBA. Like
in the NBA.
I think he's fine from the X's and O's standpoint. I think
Wasn't he on the staff this year?
He was.
No, that was his kid. His kid was.
Yeah, he was with the Hawks, right? I mean, Ewing's was with the Hawks or the Hornets. Hornets.
Okay. He was the associate head coach for the Hornets.
I mean, it's a real. He had.
Did he get a technical foul for yelling at Chris Mullen? I thought he was on George.
That was Patrick Ewing Jr.
That's his kid.
Oh my
his
God.
son.
Okay, never mind then.
All right, let's go. One other coaching change that just came out today, actually, Dave. Let me throw this over to you. You being our Ohio guy, John Gross, who was let go from Illinois, just hired at Akron to replace Keith Damper, who went over to Duquesne. Good hire, you think?
Well, in some ways, it's actually going to be a return to Gross's roots because he actually started out at OU before he went to Illinois and actually went to the Sweet 16 one year when I think they had Armand Bassett and a few others on their team. But I think one of the funny things that could happen with Akron is I think they have a better shot at winning an NCAA tournament game now under Gross than they did under Dambrot, which is real strange to say.
No, I think that this is the perfect level school for Gross, and I think he will be successful there, David.
I agree. I don't think he was unsuccessful at Illinois. And I know he didn't get done there what they wanted him to, but they weren't bad this year. I kind of liked how they were playing at the end of the year. I wouldn't have dismissed him from Illinois, and I would have at least given him one more year. I'm not going to say that he was meeting expectations, but he was giving me reason to believe that he could.
Well, they got a chance to bring in Brad Underwood, so I can't.
Yeah, that's one place. When you make a move that's sort of on the borderline, I want to see the corresponding move. I'll take Brad Underwood over John Gross any day of the week.
Okay, fair enough. But to your question, yes, I think he'll do very, very well in Akron. I think it was a good hire. I don't think they'll miss a beat.
All right. Well, we mentioned some transfers earlier. We mentioned the Taco Fall, and we mentioned players declared for the draft and transfers. But that's something that over the next 2 months or so here, we are going to find out who is on these rosters for next season, who isn't. A lot is going to be determined when we reach that mid-May deadline for people to undeclare from the NBA draft. But Matt, and you had a comment on something else also. But
I was going to quickly throw in that Gross, I'm not quite as sold in that. He was only 34 and 30 at Ohio in conference. So
okay, but Matt, I want to stick with you with the big transfer news that came out today. That's both Lawsons, the two of the three best players on Memphis's roster, will be leaving.
I don't know, why is Diedrich staying in college? He's good enough probably to play pro. I don't know if he's going to ever get that much better in college. I guess his little brother isn't quite as good. Will have to probably be a 4-year college player. But, I'm shocked that Diedrich's going to look at another college. I figured he'd just go pro.
All right. And we've seen some other transfer news coming out of some of the ACC schools also. Joby, is there anything that surprised you so far of people that are saying that they want to transfer or saying that they want to test the NBA draft waters?
The one that I'm looking at is because, a statement I've had about the national championship game is that it's great to see teams with a lot of experience and people have gone through it. And when we talk about Roy, it's especially when you compare him to his buddy down the road in Durham, is the lack of one and dones. There's rumors that Bradley is looking to at the NBA. I think that would be a mistake.
Wow.
Personally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's ready yet.
I think Bradley could be a lottery pick. Big guy, athletic, good hands. I think he needs a little bit more feel for the game. I think he can get that at North Carolina, and he'll have a place to showcase it at North Carolina. And he could be that one and done, disproving my point, but it would be a mistake one and done. I'll pick on I'm hoping for North Carolina's sake and for the young man's sake, I think Bradley would be better suited to stay in maybe just 1 year, because I think he could turn into that level of a player with Meeks and Hicks gone and him being the man inside.
Well, I think we're actually going to find out a lot more. We will be doing going forward here throughout the summer at least one video podcast each month. But what I want to do was run through. I'm sorry, Matt. Did you have another comment here? Or
oh no.
Okay, yeah. Okay. But yeah, I want to run through each of you and kind of get your feelings on what your takeaway was from this entirety of this season here, from back in David, for you at least, it was in October when they started exhibition games. For the rest of us, it was in November when they started regular season play. And was there one thing that really stands out? Is there one moment, one thought you had that you saw this season that really stands out? And Salik, why don't I start with you?
Well, it's going to be a little bit tough to say, but I'm going to go back to the Thanksgiving tournaments. And while Xavier seemed to be the team that jumped onto the map the year before, Baylor was a team that really jumped out this year in Atlantis because they were able to get 3 consecutive wins, including Wichita State and Louisville, and they were able to stay near the top of the country for a good 2 months before they started to tail off a little bit in the second half of the Big 12, and still made it as far as the Sweet 16, although they're not going to have their complete roster intact for next year, but they'll certainly have enough of it that they should be a serious factor going forward into the 2018 season.
I'd agree. That shows you that those November tournaments really can preview the season going ahead, although it can also not do so if you take a look at what a team like Indiana did in November. So, Matt, how about you? What are your final thoughts and final takeaways from this past season?
One situation I'm going to be looking at was that they're a ton of fun to watch this year, but next year, what's going to happen with UCLA? I think Lonzo Ball really transformed things, went from a selfish team that didn't like playing with each other to like one of the most unselfish teams in the country. But now that he's gone, and you have his not quite as talented younger brother whose dad still thinks he's awesome, and that add a bunch of reported new parts, and I don't think it's going to go together as well. Is Steve Alford going to be back on the hot seat? And was that why I think he wanted Indiana? They just didn't want him.
Oh, okay. Joby.
2 little small things that and kind of changed my view on some things this year is there were a few teams that got into bad funks. We're talking long-lasting bad funks that when the postseason came around completely shockingly turned it around and made it into long runs. We talk a lot about South Carolina being the obvious one there that I'm referring to, but TCU coming back and win the 19. They got to beat Kansas in the Big 12 tournament. They had their moments. You also saw it a little bit from Kentucky having that awful spell of 3 or 4, and then you take away those games, they make a run to North Carolina. It's very interesting how is it because I don't think I remember seeing those sort of shifts turn into runs like we saw this year. Is that a change in the college landscape of, there's more youth there, thus you have more of an up and down roller coaster situation, or is it a thing that we can look going forward? The other thing I would definitely want to mention real quick is I cannot begin to tell you how stupid a 9:30 tip-off is for the national ball. I cannot.
We do a whole show on that. Go ahead.
Isn't that peak viewership time?
I mean, that's the tip-off. But we want the West Coast. No. Start the West Coast at 5:30 local, then it ends at 7:30 to 8 West Coast, and you get a good rating. Not a single kid on the East Coast is staying up even to watch the tip-off if they're too young. It's really ridiculous. It's a disservice to the sport. Tremendous disservice to the sport. If I'm an advertiser, I don't want to be advertising at 11 o'clock at night, so I don't see how the revenue comes in. But
I think you could start these games around 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
start the game around 8 to 8:30 Eastern. Yeah. And if it means that people on the West Coast have to leave work a half hour earlier, that makes more sense than telling a kid they got to stay up till midnight.
I mean, not the end, the tip-off. Get over it. Yeah. And so I know we can rant on this, but I point to baseball. I remember growing up, baseball would have, championship games and World Series games. I loved watching them, et cetera. Baseball now has made the mistake. They're actually going back to what they should have been doing all along. They went through a 20-year period where they pulled this crap, and now there is a generation of kids who could give a dang about baseball, and it's because they didn't grow up watching it. Be careful. That you got the NBA, you have other components, so basketball may be a little more immune than baseball, but be careful because you could be hurting your sport long term.
Interest. Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with you guys, but hasn't it been that tip-off as far as 20 years now at least?
At least I think ever since CBS got it,
It seems to migrate back 5 or 10 minutes every year. It's kind of started at 9. Now it's almost 9:30.
It was 8:30, 8:45 for a long time.
And if we're looking at the NBA as an example,
intros at 8:30. Yeah, but now the intros begin at not 9, 9:15. It's gotten
yeah. Well, I just know that the 9 o'clock games in general, when you look at the ratings, rate higher than the 7 o'clock, and I mean that through the whole season. Like on ESPN, that second slate. But there could be a lot of reasons.
There's a difference between a regular season game that starts at 9, ends at 11, and a championship game that starts around 9:30 and ends at midnight because of all the extra timeouts and the longer halftime and all that.
And David, there's another reason. Remember, ratings are not total number of eyeballs. Ratings are done by average eyeballs per minute. So a 7 o'clock game does miss West Coast as well as early East Coast games. If you had an 8 to 10 game, I bet you that's where you're going to get your higher ratings. Hey, Duke, North Carolina, 8 to 10, magical, highest rated game of the year.
All right, so David, your final thoughts on the season?
One thing that I took away, and I had made mention to this before, and it's something that I hope continues. Every year we've been doing this, and probably most years before that, I've been complaining in November and December about the lack of exposure, the lack of attention, the lack of interest. We had seemingly, and it worked both ways. There's a lot of garbage at that time of year. There's a lot of bye games that are just uninteresting. And whenever you do get an interesting game, it doesn't seem to generate a whole lot of electricity with the fans. I did not get that sense this year, and it's the first time ever. I remember us watching Northwestern or Wake Forest at Northwestern, and I don't think either of us knew at the time we were watching 2 NCAA tournament teams, but the arena was packed and the crowd was crazy, and it was like that across the board. It just seemed there was way more interest in the early part of the season. And then another thing that we had was just the number of games every week in November and December that matched up to top 25 teams, and the number of showcase games and the number of important games. It seems like it was way higher than in previous years. So what I took away from this was just the volume of interest seemed to be there way before the Super Bowl this year. It was there in November and December. Now, it wasn't to the level that it was from February on, and it probably never will be, but I don't – am I wrong with that? It just seemed like there was way more interest in the early games this year.
You mentioned the Northwestern and Wake Forest game?
Yeah.
I'll do you one better, and I'll actually mention the Northwestern Butler game, which happened in November. I actually went up to Hinkle Fieldhouse with my nephew for that game, and we actually got to see that, which turned out to be Northwestern leading most of the game, but Kamar Baldwin for Butler also putting himself on the map with the buzzer beater in that one that also put Butler back in the general awareness this year.
Yeah, and then
they were supposed to be reloading.
But yeah, and you had Butler, Arizona, and you had like Arizona. It just seemed like every week you had games.
Arizona and Gonzaga. I mean, at the time, we knew it was big. You know, I mean, that's.
And I agree. I think that we really saw more interest this year, and I think it held up all season when we saw some of the best ratings in the NCAA tournament that we've seen in quite a while and throughout the season, and so many great games. But I guess that kind of does bring us to the end of the season. We will be back next month with and check out the website once we get it up and running again. We have our countdown clock running already for next season. But I want to end everything on one final thought here. We actually ended up seeing in D1 4 teams win championships. We saw St. Peter's win the CIT, Wyoming the CBI, TCU and the NIT. North Carolina winning the NCAA championship by winning 6 games in a row. And for the first time in a long time, North Carolina, despite winning 6 in a row, is not going to be entering next season with the longest winning streak. That honor goes to a team that ended the season with 7 consecutive wins before their season ended and they weren't allowed to play any further. That was the Grand Canyon Antelopes. The Lopes are the winningest team right now heading into next season. Best winning streak. The once and potentially future team of the people here at Hoops HD. So congratulations to Dan Marley and his Lopes. 7 in a row. More than Carolina. But on that note, on behalf of let's get you all back up on the screen here again. On behalf of Joby Fortson and John Sleeka down there, Matt Zukowski and David Griggs to my sides, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.